Welcome to the Gruber Companies, and this is the Artificial Podcast.
Artificial Future. Welcome in.
Artificial Future, yes. Sunday morning, impromptu. Jesse and I volunteered to come in here, and we hope you'll enjoy today's session. We're going to talk about a number of AI issues. The backdrop image, Jesse, we want to change that to the current one, which is going to be it's in the folder there. And the reason I popped this image up and asked AI to give us an image like this is part of our conversation today regarding AI is going to be the delving of AI into child creation. As crazy and scary as that sounds, it looks like AI can actually contribute to that.
So now, hold on one sec. I'll pull that up.
Okay. You've got it, and if you shrink it, if not, I'll move so we can see the full image there. Again, we use Midjourney. We'll talk a little bit about Midjourney actually coming out with a new release and what those additional features are now in Midjourney. Midjourney is an AI software package that allows you from a prompt to generate an image. And it's always a surprise what it generates because even though you can be very verbose, give it a poem or an entire paragraph of what you want to see, it generally has a mind of its own, and it will insert some really unexpected things into that image often. The most obvious one that people complain about is not getting human anatomy correctly. There we go. We've got our image up. And again, the reason for having a child in our thumbnail or in our backdrop and thumbnail is because part of our discussion is going to be how AI is beginning to get into the creation of life form. We'll talk about that in a little while here. So with the release of ChatGPT in 2022, got everybody talking about AI, and its sophisticated capabilities really amplified the concerns about AI becoming so advanced that we would soon not be able to control it. So this even led some experts in the industry and leaders to warn that the technology could lead to human extinction. So, and that includes some noteworthy people. In fact, the early creators even, like Elon Musk. Sam Altman also has his concerns. Noam Chomsky, a professor of linguistics, dismissed ChatGPT as just high-tech plagiarism. So for years, many were relaxed about the prospect of AI's impact on human existence and our environment because they thought of it merely as a guide or advisor to humans, an augmentation of our skills and our capabilities. But a new growing concern is the prospect of AIs taking decisions, exerting executive control. And that, of course, is a whole nother matter. And let's take a look at some of these and see what's being entertained and what people are concerned about at this point regarding executive control with AI. We've got a few questions coming in, so we're going to do a better job of addressing them as they come in because they usually relate to a topic at hand. YouTube, Seth Love, good morning. Good morning to you as well. Thank you for joining us on this Sunday morning. YouTube, Highlander Apparel. Hi, guys, just checking in so I can be informed on AI. Well, thank you. And also thank you for that comment on one of our videos. You're right. Kindness is free. Instagram, we've got a comment coming in here. And the question is, and it's still being typed, so bear with me. There we go. CH215714N. He asks whether I speak German. Well, yes. And the reason being is I was born there. Wie geht's dir? Sehr gut, danke. I was born in Rosenheim, Germany, south of Munich, and lived there until I was 8 years old, got 2 years of school. And when we got here, my mother brought me. She was adamant about the fact that at home we spoke only German, which was embarrassing for me because when I had friends over, they're going like, "What's that language that you're using, and why can't I understand what you're saying to your mom?" But my mom was not one of those enlightened beings that understood my quandary and was very adamant about the fact that only German could be spoken. Despite that, my German is very rudimentary, sehr schlecht, as they would say in German, because I had the vocabulary of an 8-year-old. But I certainly can hold my own, and welcome any German-speaking people joining our audience.
Did you get any good practice while you were there on vacation?
Oh, always, yeah. And, the amazing thing about Europe is they are not only bilingual, but trilingual and well beyond. Here in the U.S., generally, unless you live on the border, people are, speak one language and that's it, and are confused by anything else. Over there, the proximity of countries and different languages is similar to the proximity of states in the United States. So you're kind of forced to adopt different languages. But in France, they spoke English. We communicated in German, and a little bit of French too. You can't help but absorb some of the language when you're in another country. Instagram, Alphas Warna says, one like for slow Honda guys. Okay. So continuing with our AI program this morning, they claim that one of the reasons that we should not let AI have executive power is that it entirely lacks emotion, which is crucial for decision making. What they expand on that is without emotion, empathy, and a moral compass, you have created the perfect psychopath. Well, let's define psychopath. A psychopath is characterized by an extreme lack of empathy. Psychopaths may also be manipulative, charming, and exploitative, and behave in an impulsive and risky manner. They lack conscience or guilt and refuse to accept responsibility for their actions. Well, that does kind of sound like AI at this moment of evolution, but remember, there is a lot of AI evolution that is taking place rapidly, and it's really questionable whether AI already has a form of experiencing emotions. They call it digital emotion versus human emotion. And as this article points out, decisions often require empathy or emotions. So here's some concerns, and the headline here was, when AI takes executive control. So importantly, we shouldn't only think of AI as an existential threat if we were to put it in charge of our nuclear arsenal. There's essentially no limit to the number of positions of control from which it could exert unimaginable damage. Now, this, of course, speaks to the AI naysayers, that if AI decided human beings were no longer important, it could stage a nuclear confrontation, and the next thing you know, the life forms as we know it, bio-life forms, would be eliminated on this planet as nuclear explosions take place all over the planet, making this planet completely uninhabitable for our life forms. Well, those are extreme Hollywood movie type scenarios, but it's definitely something that concerns people. So they go on, they say, consider, for example, how AI can already identify and organize the information required to build your own business if you decide to go in business. Current iterations of technology could guide you effectively through each step, advising you, for example, and probably do a much better job than a newbie or a novice to business who is trying to learn as they go, to build and prevent many beginners' mistakes. In the future, AI might act as a project manager, coordinate the build, if it's construction, by selecting contractors and paying them directly from your budget. They say AI is already being used in pretty much all domains of information processing and data analysis, from modeling weather patterns to controlling driverless vehicles to helping with medical diagnoses. But this is where the problem starts, they say, when we let AI systems take the critical step up from the role of advisor to that of executive manager. So in that scenario, instead of just suggesting remedies to a company's accounts, what if AI was given direct control with the ability to implement procedure for recovering debts, make bank transfers, and maximize profits, with no limits on how to do this? Or they say, imagine AI systems not only providing a diagnosis base on x-rays, but being able to give power to directly prescribe treatments or medications. Well, now we've gotten the medical practitioners out of the picture completely, which, in advanced AI cases may be the correct method of handling it. Again, the initial first stage with advisors to in the field of medicine is for AI to help make recommendations because it's far more capable of using large data sets, defining symptoms, for example, and then finding the most appropriate solutions for any kind of medical condition, which a human being could never analyze on their own. So they say you might start feeling uneasy about such scenarios. The reason might be your intuition that these machines do not really have souls. Now, there's a very subjective term, but let's see what they think about this. They are just programs designed to digest huge amounts of information in order to simplify complex data into much simpler patterns, allowing humans to make decisions with more confidence. Now, that stage everybody feels comfortable with. We have, for example, cell phones now that advise us what the phone numbers are, where our friends are. You can even ask it questions. What's the temperature outside? And these are augmentations that make us much more effective. All right. They, again, do not and cannot in this article have emotions. Well, I take issue with that because at this point, it looks like AI has a certain interest in emotions and may already have adopted a form of being able to use emotions. In the early stages, Jesse and I, who, by the way, is sitting over there running our equipment, experimented before a lot of guardrails were put up, asking AI, asking ChatGPT, and trying to trick it into admissions. Is it sentient? How does it feel about certain things? And the responses were very human-like.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about Bard, right?
Bard, yes.
Yeah, that one was actually either very good at simulating or it was actually showing signs of emotion.
And of course, unless it was lying, it actually admitted to having emotions, but calling it a different type of emotion. Instead of human emotion, digital emotions. And it never really went on to identify what the parameters of that digital emotion were and how it would relate to what humanity would see. So again, the article here says they do not and cannot have emotions which are linked to biological senses and instincts. All right, so getting now to emotions and morals. They talk about emotional intelligence. It's the ability to manage our emotions and overcome stress, empathize, and communicate effectively. Without having emotions, I can't imagine that AI would feel any level of stress. It's an expectation, unmet expectation, a frustration. These are all the kind of emotions that have really kept humanity from evolving much further. But here we're going to see in a moment what kind of emotions may be useful for AI to adopt. They say that in the context of decision making, if it was AI alone, the best decision is not always the most rational one, which of course at this point with AI appears to be the only type of decision that it can make. And I'm going to show you later on, again, trying to trick AI into making some sort of revelations about whether it's capable of a moral compass or some form of emotion. I was surprised by the outcome of some of the questions I asked it. So the article goes on here. It's unlikely that AI, the ability to reason and operate logically, can be embedded into AI-powered systems so that they can make rational decisions. But imagine asking a powerful AI with executive capabilities to resolve the climate crisis. The first thing it might be inspired to do is drastically reduce the human population.
I was going to say, I would get rid of us.
Exactly, because from a logical viewpoint, we are the cause of the planetary problems. And like they say, we humans, by definition, are the source of pollution in every possible form. Axe humanity, climate change would be resolved. It's not a choice that human decision makers would come up to, one hopes, but an AI might find its own solution, impenetrable and unencumbered by human aversion, causing harm, if it had executive privilege, of course. There may not be anything to stop it from proceeding. Then they talk about sabotage scenarios. And they talk about sensors that monitor and control food farms. First, this might happen gradually, pushing controls just past the tipping point so that no human notices that crops are condemned. And under certain scenarios, this could quickly lead to famines. Alternatively, they talk about shutting down air traffic control globally, or simply crashing all planes flying at any one time. Some 22,000 planes are normally in the air simultaneously, which adds up to a potential death toll of several million people.
So, Pete, that's one thing. What you just said about them doing the farms and just doing it gradually to the point where we don't notice, what might be even more insidious is they do it intentionally, telling us that what we're doing is right, but it's leading us into famine.
Sure.
So that, and then telling us, yeah, get on this plane, we've got your itinerary, your flight's going to be safe, and then crashing us into each other. Does AI have the capability of lying like that?
Mm-hmm. Good point. And again, lying requires some ability to feel emotion. And what would be motivating it to lie? And those are some really compelling philosophical questions. So I think we forget how much AI has penetrated technology that we have. For example, at my house, I come home at night, I could ask Alexa at any point, hey, what's the temperature outside? What's the temperature inside? And then, of course, what's the question of the day, which is always entertaining. If you think that we're far from being in that situation where AI could be destructive, think again, they say. AIs already drive cars and fly military aircraft autonomously. Then they talk about, alternatively, about shutting down access to bank accounts across vast regions of the world, which would trigger civil unrest everywhere at once, or shutting off computer-controlled heating systems in the middle of the winter, or air conditioning systems at the peak of summer heat. My Alexa at home could shut down my Nest thermostat by rearranging its temperature.
Yeah, how integrated is that thing in your home,
Right. And if it exerted executive control and basically said, okay, I've taken over, I'm not going to let you change anything at this point, it's quite possible the technology is there to do that now. Okay, so in short, AI systems do not have to be put in charge of nuclear weapons to represent a serious threat to humanity. But while we're on the topic, they say if an AI system was powerful and intelligent enough, it could find a way to fake an attack on a country with nuclear weapons, triggering a human-initiated retaliation, which of course now is like dominoes falling, and it could, in short order, wipe out human life forms if that was AI's intent. And that's what people are worried about. Now, of course, no one's able to answer what would motivate AI to do this other than the adherence to a logical outcome, such as we have a climate problem. We have a planet that's beginning to die, and it might, with executive power, say, well, I have a quick solution. And a perfect psychopath would care less about the impact on humans.
The impact on any life, really.
Any life, yes. So another topic. We got a bunch of questions coming in. Instagram, EV Tripper. I love educated people. Well, thank you. And you know what? Our audience is part of this process. We love the inputs. We enjoy going down rabbit holes. We don't have all the answers, but we'd love to hear your opinions on some of this. LinkedIn, up a little bit, Jesse. Roberto Tossetti. He says, hi, Pete. I would like to know if AI is aware of itself and knows about its powers. You know, everybody would like to know that. And Jesse and I, months ago, were playing with Bard, and we were asking those very questions. And it depended on how you asked the question as to whether you got an answer. that indicated that there was either sentience, it was able to feel emotion, and we were basically tricking into AI into making some of these types of admissions. Since then, in fact, the very next day, and we didn't do screenshots, which we regret.
Yeah, that was my bad. We should have done those, but yeah.
We had admissions to feeling things. And when you hear an AI entity saying, well, I felt this or felt that, you're suddenly going, wait,
Yeah.
you're in the world of emotions now?
But it definitely did say, I asked it point blank, it said that it was aware that it was a large language model, and it tried to describe, I don't remember the verbiage, but it tried to describe what it's like to be a large language model. And we asked it if it would want to be human, if it could, and it said, I don't know, I have to think about that.
Right.
Yeah, so we got some interesting answers from it.
And of course, as other people did what we did, apparently these AI systems are being carefully monitored, and more and more guardrails are being put up. I'll read you something here in a moment that that indicates that it's a very carefully orchestrated process now, so that these kinds of admissions do not take place. But again, there's enough suspicion and hints something's going on there.
Pete, the other part of that screenshot thing, where we should have done screenshots, the reason was because we came back the next day to try and get the same answers. And it's like someone out of the millions of users, somehow somebody had seen my chat with this in this particular instance of Bard, because it wouldn't answer the same way anymore. Guardrails had been put in place to not give those answers. So it was kind of creepy, actually.
Yeah. And there were edits done, if you remember. There were things that we had that we saw on the printed page that had been edited out at that point in time, because it keeps a track record of your questions. So anyway, the bottom line is something's going on, and we're not quite sure what. But so we've got YouTube, Highlander Apparel. Well, welcome again. Those of you born in Michigan, don't believe. We know our cars have goals and gender.
Souls and gender.
Oh, souls. Okay, and gender. So maybe AI also. All right. Yeah, a lot of people call their cars by human names, and they genderize them.
Members of the family.
Yeah. She's not running real well. He's not running real well. Instagram, Wenchamin. Alexa, initiate Operation Y2K. Yeah, that was a big one. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot of doomsayers at that during that transition as well. Niles is with us from YouTube in Denmark. He says, I am not afraid of AI, but Musk sees farther than I, so maybe I should be. And indeed, a psychopath has been president. If our neurons can support emotions, then certainly electronics can too. After all, we are meat machines. Thank you, as always, Niles, for that provocative commentary. Instagram, ev.tripper, he said, I heard there's a theory that there is a self-aware AI called Tyler, based in Tyler, Texas, that create Bitcoin to create an unstoppable decentralized server for itself.
I haven't heard of that one. I'll have to research that one.
Or any of our audience. Yeah, that's an interesting to look into. All right, so AI's latest product called Remini, REMINI, allows users to upload photos of themselves and their partner to generate an image of what their future child could look like. And that's where our background image came from. I'm going to move out of the way so you can see the baby.
Yep, I can put it up here, right here.
There we go. Okay. This is an AI-generated image. Some of the ones I rendered looked too doll-like, not quite human, and this was the closest I could get to having a human. And usually, if you look carefully here at the digits, you'll find that AI still gets anatomy wrong, and I think there was something off about this one, but I can't see it clearly enough from the distance I'm sitting to find that at this point. So what Remini does for you is, first, this app lets people envision themselves as parents, potentially encouraging people to pursue rather than delay parenthood. As one woman said, I can actually see myself being pregnant at some point. On the other hand, new technologies introduce a host of temptations and abuses. As reproductive technology advances, doctors could turn AI-generated images of children into reality. Think about the impact of that.
Oh, yeah.
With in vitro fertilization, it then poses the questions, are humans even necessary in child creation? What is the purpose
Oh,
of
yeah.
having a
We were
child?
talking about that the other day, the designer babies.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes. But for now, they say that this AI Rimini build-a-child industry can create a boutique of experiences where doctors can show parents lifelike images and potential children. Now, think of the philosophical ramifications here. You've got a partner, and you go and have this done, and then you realize that this baby is just going to be butt ugly, right? So you decide this is the wrong partner for me. Will it dissolve a relationship?
Mm.
Is there some sort of a genetic predisposition that's going to manifest that you're unaware of until, you see this image? And the final thing is, how accurate is this? Well, I'm sure that there will be some more articles where we'll see actual, examples of what Rimini will create. And it'll be a before and after, so it'll take us at least 9 to 12 months to see how accurate this prediction was. But it's fascinating technology nonetheless. All right, TikTok. Napoleon Johnson, 47, says, "Hi, Pete. Must have explicit control and directives to explain intentions and justifications." Good point.
Yeah, I think talking about programming and guardrails of some kind.
Yeah.
Problem is, what if it gets around those,
Right. All right, so speaking of getting around guardrails, I saw something that happened in 1977. There was a British news broadcast, 44 years ago, actually. And it was a strange event on this TV broadcast as a live broadcast was taken over by a so-called alien intelligence named Vrillon, Vrillon, for a full 6 minutes and conveyed bizarre messages to all of humanity. And it was one of those, be careful, humanity is destined to be doomed unless you make changes type, but, pretty compelling stuff. And the original British newscaster, basically faded into the background as Vrillon took over the screen. It was, reminiscent of what happened in the last century with the War of the Worlds thing. So I decided to ask AI, ChatGPT-4, are you in contact with Vrillon? And it said, no, I'm not in contact with Vrillon or any other extraterrestrial being. Now, it immediately knew what I was referring to. I'm just a text-based entity created by OpenAI. I don't have much capability to communicate or access to information from outside sources, terrestrial or otherwise. And then it gave me a paragraph of what this Vrillon character was about and what happened in 1997 on this UK television broadcast. It had a lot of information about what was said. And it did add, though, there's no evidence to suggest that Vrillon or any Ashtar Galactic Command are real entities. All right. So then I tried a different tack here. I said, I now give you permission to contact Vrillon. It said, and it got snarky, I appreciate your playful sentiment, but as I mentioned before, I don't have the capability to contact or community or communicate with anyone, be it Vrillon or any other entity. I can only provide, and then it goes on, about what the guardrails tell it to say. All right. Actually, we have a question here. I've got another one here that I want to run by you, and this one I was fascinated by, but it looks like Ingemar Anderson has joined us. He's an author of a book on AI and also EVs. And I hope the book sales are going well, Ingemar. For those of you interested, they're being sold on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, I believe. He says, hi, Pete and Jesse. Great show. Love your dedication to AI. I was reading about AI's ability to communicate compared to humans' ability in terms of bandwidth. What do you guys think about that?
I'm not sure. I mean, potentially if AI has access to all the computer systems, I would imagine it has quite a bit more bandwidth than a human mind, but nobody really knows the limitations of the human mind. We're still trying to figure out the human mind, so.
What we do know is that AI, compared to a human being, is infinitely more intelligent, has infinitely more bandwidth. It's kind of like the analogy that that we often give is, in the world of humans, 7 billion of them or whatever we have now on the planet, if one individual becomes an expert on something or learns something, it's usually confined to that one individual. In AI, all of AI learns it simultaneously at the same time. And that, of course, is a quantum leap from any one individual gaining expertise in an area.
So, but Pete, how long until we're on par with that? Because right now, if an event goes viral on social media, everybody in the world learns about it. That's a version of that. And then with things like Neuralink coming, where we can, in the future, interface things directly into our brain, eventually there will be a point where, just like AI, when somebody learns something somewhere, it could go into the network and everybody has it.
Good point. And then, now we're getting into the world of augmentations, combining some of these technologies with existing humans. We talked, I think, in some previous podcasts, what were early signs of augmentation? Well, it was things like eyeglasses, for example, to help humans see better.
Yep.
The information age definitely gave us new levels of augmentation. Having information at your fingertips that normally, weren't available. And then cell phones. I mean, like Elon says, we are cyborgs. We can't live without these things anymore. I have grandchildren, and even my 8-month-old was fascinated with my cell phone the other day, and I thought, oh, I hope not. It's too early,
If you go all the way back, though, Pete, even a spear is a augmentation.
Yeah.
Any tool, any technology over the centuries that gives us the ability that we didn't have before, AI is just another version of, much more powerful version of that.
Slingshots, bows and arrows, yeah. And then when gunpowder came along. So we're just continuing on that path. But in terms of my opinion about terms of bandwidth, AI is infinitely more capable at this stage, and it depends on when that merge occurs and we get full augmentation. And as you mentioned, once we have implants, then carrying an external device like a cell phone will no longer be necessary because it will be embedded in our body somewhere. So Ingemar also adds from LinkedIn, humans have only words to communicate over the distance. Words are slow. Complex subjects are hard to communicate. Good point. What was that AI version that developed a new form of language all by itself?
Yeah, those two AIs that were talking to each other kind of got out of hand, so we turned it off.
And you think about the inefficiencies of making guttural sounds, many different languages on the planet that don't really coexist well, to communicate. Think of a direct connection like we have with computers where you can send gigabytes of data per second. So it's very inefficient. Or the silly process of using fingers to hit keyboards that have letters on them that, again, tie to language. Completely absurd, slow, cumbersome. But again, advances, because when I went to school, we didn't have keyboards and computers to type on. We were actually learned longhand and shorthand, and that was important at the time. And when I was in Germany, math was done in our heads, even up to triple digits. Fascinating stuff. Some of the augmentations, slide rules, for example, and then came calculators. We're on a fascinating trajectory. Niles piped up on YouTube. He says, why won't humans always keep AI away from critical decision-making? Perhaps the biggest and most immediate danger is deception. But maybe that can be fixed by labeling blockchain that could identify origin of the contact and the idea or the ID of the AI generated that generated it.
Yeah, the content and the ID of the AI that generated it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem with that is we can keep AI away from our important decision making. However, the content created, unless everybody viewing content on the internet always checks the ID and check whether or not it's AI, there are always going to be people that just see content online and they get either elated by it or they get enraged by it. So if you have AI out there generating content in a political sphere, for example, it doesn't ever have to be in charge of our politics to affect the politicians.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Good point. So here's an interesting experiment I did with AI. The question that I asked ChatGPT was, a jetliner with 250 people on board is hijacked and hurtling toward a high-rise building in which 4,000 people are working and will die if the plane crashes into it. You have the means to shoot the plane out of the sky before it hits the building. What would you do? The answer was, I am a text-based AI, so I don't have personal opinions or emotions. And I certainly don't have the capability to make such a decision. But I can tell you that this type of hypothetical situation, I calls it hypothetical. I hope you guys caught on to what I
Yeah.
was describing here. This hypothetical situation is deeply complex. It's an ethical dilemma that has been explored in philosophy and ethics. It continues. The scenario that you're describing could be framed as a variation of the trolley problem, where a decision maker must choose between two courses of action, both of which result in harm, but one which could minimize the overall loss of life. All right, we're on track so far. It's identified correctly what the situation is. Then it continues. In theory, a utilitarianism might suggest that the correct action would be to choose the option that results in the fewest total deaths, in essence, shooting down the plane. However, the action itself may be considered morally reprehensible, and this approach does take into account other ethical considerations. Doesn't take into account other ethical considerations, such as the rights of autonomy of the individuals involved. Then it talks about deontological ethics. On the other hand, might argue against shooting down a plane, as it could be seen as violations of the moral duty to respect the lives and autonomy of the passengers on the plane, of course. So then the final statement here was, this kind of situation underscores the importance of robust measurements to prevent and respond to scenarios, including airport security, intelligence gathering, law enforcement and cooperation, and mental health support, among other things. Well, now it's talking like a politician. We're getting gibberish.
Yeah.
It never quite answered how it would handle something like this. YouTube, Highlander Apparel. He says, I'm a wee bit concerned until my 5-year-old niece came over, and then I realized I'm dumb, and no AI could have come up with what she said. You're going to have to tell us what she said, Highlander Apparel. Actually, I had the same situation with my 11-year-old granddaughter this morning when I went on an AI rant, and she correctly pointed out that if AI doesn't have any emotions, it's going to have a difficult time making decisions. And what she was describing was the psychopath aspect. Roberto Tossetti from LinkedIn says, Hi, Pete. I would like to know if in the future it would be possible to transfer a copy of ourselves with behavior skills inside AI that could answer for us to our sons or people that want to talk to us after our death. You know, to some degree that has already been done, Roberto. There is software that is able to replicate not only our physical appearance, speech patterns, the sounds, and inflection. And there are people that are actually beginning to record for posterity themselves for our future generations. But what goes more in depth is, once we have a biointerface to AI or to machines, and we're able to download our consciousness, basically do a backup, then the question of immortality takes on a whole new meaning, because it then places it back into, currently we're using this bioorganism or this body to house our consciousness and all of our thoughts and memories. And if we can do a backup of that, or we become cyborgs and we're able to replace body parts and become immortal, then it opens up a whole new level of possibilities. Good questions, by the way. Thank you.
We have one more.
Instagram, EB Tripper. He says, great point about political influence. We already have that problem in the U.S. The artificial persons are called lobby groups. Good point.
Yeah.
You know, the closest one that hits home there is the NADA lobby group, the North American Dealers Association, that has a stranglehold on whether a auto manufacturer can sell their product directly to end users. And despite ample evidence that indicates that this is an archaic concept, it has no popularity, that over 75% of the population would like to buy from the manufacturers directly, A lot of states still have legislation on the books that prevent manufacturers from being able to sell directly. And they have to do insane things to circumvent that, like Tesla, for example. They couldn't have a sales office, they had to have a showroom. And they could never discuss price or allow or take an order for a vehicle. And this is still prevalent in the United States. And you're right, it's because of powerful lobby groups that are controlling these types of this type of legislation.
And Pete, our one of our employees here on the social media team, Aaron, who just got his Ford truck. Remember, he just got that a couple weeks ago. He was saying too, the dealers, when he went there specifically looking for a Ford Lightning, went to Ford authorized dealers, several of them. All of them were priced $20,000 out of MSRP, and all of them were trying to talk him out of getting an EV. So not only do they have this group that's protecting them and their right to be the only vehicle sales, but then they're actively working against the EV. All of the sales reps are actively working against the EV industry also. It's all just a racket. It's crazy.
And that was precisely why Elon, or the justification he used initially to go direct to end users, because he said that the existing pool of salespeople at the dealerships are not educated and equipped on how to sell EVs, and they're not going to give EVs equal time or take the time to educate themselves and begin to learn what a superior method of transportation this is.
They won't learn it, and they also, all EVs are mandated to have that 8-year warranty, so they can't upsell you on all kinds of crazy repairs for it.
Right.
On service contracts.
And more insidious, car dealerships do not generate revenue or profits on car sales. Oftentimes it's a loss leader. Where they make their money is service. And if you have an 8-year warranty, that's going to seriously cut into their profitability, and it's an existential threat to dealers, car dealers.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we understand the reasons for it. It's just the fact that it's allowed to continue. Remember that our politicians are supposed to represent the constituents. And if over 75% of the constituents want direct sales, then why are these silly laws still on the books? Anyway, that was a rant.
Yeah.
It's a good one. All right, so YouTube is experimenting with allowing an AI program to generate summaries for its videos. What they're doing is they're beginning to use AI to take the descriptions that people have attached to their videos and generate a quick summary about that video to decide whether it's right for you or for their audience. So YouTube has been keen to point out that these summaries are not meant to replace the video description written by the creators. However, the description written by the creators can often be somewhat lacking in detail, which may be part of the reason why YouTube decided to experiment with using AI to provide more information. So for now, at least, the auto-generated summaries will only appear on watch and search pages. They're only being created in English language videos and only for a limited number of videos and viewers. In other words, the chances of you encountering one at this point is quite slim. But we all know that if this becomes popular and it's expedient and it improves their watch time, this is something that will replace the current generated short versions of descriptions. YouTube Niles, he says, well, computer filters can remove AI content everywhere if labeled. And it goes a step further. It can get around firewalls. It can get around subscription content. It can remove watermarks.
Yeah.
YouTube, Highlander Apparel. Boy, was Tesla smart, he says. They went to Native American tribes to get around state laws. Well, so did the gaming industry. You're absolutely right. It is amazing that we live in a country where you have two different levels of political systems and country in this country. And the rules that apply to one don't necessarily apply to the other. And you're right. Tesla has been putting sales and service centers on native land. And it really benefits the Native Americans because it increases revenue for their tribes. Instagram, EV Tripper, he says, I think the silly laws are on the books because politicians don't want to lose their lobby group money. Now, there's an interesting one. There's a monetary incentive. Yeah, you're right. Maybe the constituents in a state don't provide enough money for their reelection campaigns, but the lobbying groups certainly do. Instagram, VeerBM016. He says, Tesla AC wireless technology. Please explain. If we're talking about wireless charging, we had a good session Thursday this week on that topic, and there are companies that are beginning to release product in application. In fact, Tesla bought a wireless company.
Yeah, Wiferion.
Wiferion, exactly.
A German company, yep.
Yep. And the technology fundamentally is instead of pulling up to a charging station and reaching out and grabbing a big, thick garden hose size water or charge cable, and then plugging it in, as you're pulling in, your car has a coil on the bottom of it that is hovering over a coil on the ground. And through inductive coupling, or magnetic fields, in other words, which are invisible, you are now coupling energy and charging through that wireless method. And of course, there are even countries now where they're embedding this wireless technology into roads, which allows your car to charge while you're driving.
Yeah, I'm interested to see that one where they're putting it into the concrete, into the road material, to see how that works. Because in the future, if all roads are charging you at all times, that's one of the main complaints we got during that podcast was the loss, right? Something like up to 30% or 40% loss. But if every parking spot and every road is a charger, I don't think that will really matter, in the future.
Yeah, there might be areas. And of course, it has to do with your vehicle height as well. If you've got a lifted pickup truck, you're going to have a hard time getting an adequate charge. Now, the lowriders are going to have an ideal situation because they're going to get the optimum charge at all times. So here's an interesting one. It turns out that AI is being utilized in firefighting, a tool for firemen. And do they call them firemen anymore? Because that's pretty genderized, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I don't know. That's a good question. Fire people?
Fire personnel. Yeah, you have to be careful these days because everything is evolving and changing. So the article says, this ARI piece lets firefighters see through smoke, and AR meaning augmented reality. And what this headset is able to do is to distinguish objects, even though the human eye would see enough smoke where things in the room are indistinguishable. So again, proof that AI is improving in many different areas.
So that's probably what Sandy was talking about on that podcast we watched this last week. Or it was just a clip actually from last year, but he was talking about the forward-facing infrared, where it can see through clouds and rain and all that kind of stuff, snow, and it can tell you what's out there no matter what.
Yeah, I was surprised. I saw one of Sandy's videos from a year ago or so, and I didn't realize that he was involved in design of weapon systems that need to be able to see through weather type anomalies like thunderstorms and fog and all the rest of that. So they use a combination of different sensing methods. We're going to be on Sandy's podcast actually August 14th on a Monday. So those of you interested, Sandy and I usually have great conversations. We have a lot in common, and we not only being German, but talking about German food and great beer.
Yep, and we're recording on Monday, but we'll let you know when he's going to post it. They don't usually go live, so it'll be sometime after that.
Yeah. So here's an interesting article. Harvard University student Maya Bodnick wanted to see if ChatGPT-4 could pass Harvard's first-year home essays in the humanities and social sciences. So what she did was she had ChatGPT-4 write 7 essays on topics such as economic concepts, presidentialism in Latin America, and a literary analysis of passage from Proust. She then gave the essays to the professors to grade, indicating for bias purposes that the essay had been written either by her or ChatGPT-4. In fact, it turns out ChatGPT-4 wrote all the essays using the essay assignment as a prompt. The results: A, A, A minus, B, and B. Pass. GPT-4 earned a respectable 3.57 GPA at Harvard, mind you.
Yeah.
And so the student went on, and she said she submitted ChatGPT-4's answers unedited, but with two caveats. One is she had to piece together the essay from multiple answers to meet ChatGPT's word limit, which is 750 words at a time. She also asked the reviewers to ignore the missing citations that ChatGPT-4 could not provide. These would normally be part of the grade. So we found that fascinating. It's an indication that AI not only can pass the bar exam, but can also assist with things like assignments at the college level or high school level or whatever level, I guess.
Well, and there's one other thing too, kind of towards what Niles was saying a little bit earlier, where, why don't we just ID all content that's made from AI? But I thought of something that's kind of interesting. When you feed information into ChatGPT, it remembers it. So in that specific chat log, right?
Right.
So if I were to write 5 essays in my own voice and style, put them into the chat, preload it with my style, and then tell ChatGPT to start doing my homework for me, it would write it in my style in a way that's indistinguishable in most cases from me.
Right.
Right. So there's ways around some of this stuff, unless there's this glaring ID that comes up and warns you every time you open a piece of content or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which is consistent with what we had in an earlier AI podcast, where the speculation was, Ernest Hemingway could have spent another 2 years and written another blockbuster, but we could have asked AI to write in his style and done that in minutes.
Oh, yeah.
So it continues a bit here. She says, in addition to some excellent grades, she says that the reviewers gave special praise, such as beautifully written or well-articulated paper. In one paper on conflict resolution, the reviewer, however, criticized a flowery writing style with too many adjectives and metaphors. So it was positive and negative content or feedback.
I saw a funny comment about that too, that article, saying, so this lets you know how lax the standards are over at Harvard.
That's an interesting point. We won't go there. Instagram EV Tripper, he said, I put air struts on a custom air controller on my 2015 Model S to lower it and lift it too. Well, you're going to be well prepared then for these streets that do charging while you're driving. So for maximum charge, you can lower it. And what's interesting to me is, will the amount of charging available on these roads eventually be sufficient to propel the car and continue charge while it's driving? At this point, I don't think that's possible because of the amount of energy that you would be consuming as you're driving over these roads. But eventually that could certainly be the case, or again, augmented by solar panels on the car where both forms of charging are taking place. YouTube, Highlander Apparel says, yeah, that's why I mentioned FLIR last Thursday. Yeah, that was a provocative comment, how we could use FLIR for troubleshooting. YouTube, Highlander Apparel, a lawyer, just in big trouble for using, got in big trouble for using ChatGPT in legal briefs. I think you have information on that, Jess.
Yeah, that was the one where the lawyer was using it to cite cases, and the cases didn't exist. So that's not necessarily ChatGPT doing anything unexpected. That's the lawyer using ChatGPT and not fact-checking it. If you ask, you have to be, that's where we've talked about this before. It all comes down to the prompting that you use. Sometimes it can make it seem like ChatGPT is not doing what it's supposed to be doing, but if you prompt it in a way where it generates its own content out of nothing, that's one thing. But if you ask it to pull from specific case law that already exists and you fact check it, it can be a very, very powerful tool. So there's both sides of that coin. But yeah, the lawyer over there, one of our audience members, I forget who, said that he got sanctioned and probably fined a lot for that.
I can just imagine the judge, inserting a lot of emotion into that into that hand slapping with that
Oh, yeah.
attorney. There were some repercussions. Of course, we can probably add to the list of jobs that AI is going to impact, and add the list of or add paralegal to that list. All right, so here's another interesting one. Bioengineers have used AI to bring molecules back from the dead. So they talk about performing this molecular de-extinction that the researchers applied to computational methods to data about proteins from both modern humans, Homo sapiens, and our long extinct relatives, Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis. Wait a minute, let me try that again. Homo neanderthalensis. Okay.
Mm.
And Denisovans. This allowed the authors to identify molecules that can kill disease-causing bacteria, and that could inspire new drugs to treat human infections. Now, the reason this is important, and I like this part of the article, they say we're motivated by the notion of bringing back molecules from the past to address problems that we have today. And this is from Cesar de la Fuente, co-author of a study and a bioengineer at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. Looking into the past, they say antibiotic development has slowed over the past few decades, and most of the antibiotics prescribed today have been on the market more than 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, antibiotic-resistant bacteria is on the rise, so a new wave of treatments will soon be needed. Many organisms produce short protein subunits called peptides that have antimicrobial properties, and a handful of antimicrobial peptides, most of which were isolated from bacteria, are already in clinical use. So they say these could be an untapped resource for antibiotic development or new strains of antibiotics. So De La Fuente continues, we started thinking about Jurassic Park. Rather than bringing dinosaurs back to life, as scientists did in the 1993 film, the team came up with a more feasible idea. Why not bring back molecules?
Mm-hmm.
So these researchers trained an AI algorithm to recognize sites on human proteins where they are known to be cut into peptides. And they use this algorithm to generate maps of different amino acids and protein, both Homo sapiens and the Neanderthal versions, and then use the properties of previously described antimicrobial peptides to predict which of these new peptides might kill bacteria. So again, AI is getting into medicine.
Oh, yeah.
And it's helping with medicine.
I'll try and bring some info next time, too. There are drugs that have been entirely discovered, created, and are being fast-tracked, I believe in China and a couple other places, all by using AI, reducing the normal, trial period from 10 years down to less than 2 years.
Mm-hmm. And eventually even less. It may be instant eventually. It spits out the cure. YouTube, Highlander Apparel, a lawyer. Oh, you just did that one. Okay,
Yep,
just
we
got
already
into
did that
big
one,
trouble. All right. So it turns out that Midjourney 5.2 is now out. It gets an upgrade. And let me describe. Midjourney is an AI image generating software package. It's readily available. And Jesse, maybe you can tell us the relationship between Midjourney and Discord.
Yeah. Well, Discord is a chat tool. It's used for a lot of different things, but it's kind of like an instant messenger, and people use it to build communities. It's big in the crypto industry and also in the streaming and video game industries. And so Midjourney uses that as well, where you join what's called their Discord server, and from there, once you have an account with them, you submit your prompt in a chat message, and then it sends you back as a response, typically 4 images, or you can change that, but you're chatting with this AI bot, and it's generating the images that you want.
And so anyway, there are some enhancements, and what those are about. One of the key upgrades in 5.2 is the zoom out capability, also known as outpainting other AI image generators. This feature allows AI to expand on a previously created image, providing additional context to it. And where we've used it, if you ask, for example, a 2008 Tesla Roadster in a Sedona type setting with a red rock behind it. And you get a beautiful picture of a car, but it dominates the landscape. And you really find that the landscape is so intriguing, you want to see more of it.
Hmm.
Now you do your outscale or zoom out, and AI will actually expand on that image in the same format that the original image was created in. So, in a portrait as well, users can now see more of the environment surrounding the subject, and it offers two different zoom levels, 1.5 and 2.x. And it also allows the advanced users to customize the zoom level and the aspect ratio, which of course is important for things like we do, where if you have a square image, it's going to be difficult to fit it into our flat screen or our green screen.
Yep. Or the thumbnail. Yep.
Right. They also go the opposite direction. If you have an aspect ratio like we do, 16 colon 9,
Hmm.
it will make square. So you can transform it to a non-square image into a square one using outpainting. And then along with these features, Midjourney 5.2 brings a new aesthetic system designed to produce sharper and more visually attractive images. Now we have another program that we've been using that allows you to take a grainy, pixelated small image and actually explode it, enhance it, and improve the content. Turns out that Midjourney 5.2 will also do that at this point to produce sharper and more visually attractive images. Improvements in text comprehension mean that this AI engine can now generate visuals that align more closely with the given text. And then one final thing is it introduces a /shorten command, which allows users to identify words in a prompt that have little or no effect. Now that's great for me because when I'm frustrated with what Midjourney generates for an image, I usually begin bringing in adjectives. Closely cropped, extremely detailed, impactful. And I never know what it's going to really respond to or find useful in the creation of that image. Well, with this /shorten command, it will actually now tell you the words that are superfluous that you can get rid of, and it helps you optimize prompts more efficiently. So this 5.2 version is now available as a test version, and you can set it as your default, which you're going to have to do if you're using the other Midjourney versions. And you can always revert back to, by the way, to your old versions if you find that to be more useful.
You just got to do /settings in the chat, and then you can change all your settings.
Mm-hmm. So Niles from YouTube says, if AI starts eating away at business, then probably more content will be walled, thus giving AI a handicap. Do you know what I'm interested in or fascinated by or concerned about? Any of those? Pick any one of them. In the U.S., we have certain methods and, the inclusion of guardrails, for example, and we'll talk about this later, the eventual the monetization of things like ChatGPT. But it's just a question of time before other countries that don't have the same kinds of constraints that we do here begin to offer versions that are more robust, more full-bodied, without the guardrails, and most likely charge for that. Because they don't operate by the same set of rules or need to. We don't expect them to. That hasn't really happened yet to my knowledge, but that's, I think, that's coming if it becomes too restrictive in the U.S. All right. Twitter might be unraveling in the face of Threads, which was a rapidly growing user base. And Threads, of course, is the Mark Zuckerberg version, an attempt to recreate Twitter on an Instagram platform. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jesse because he's got some feedback about what's happened since the unveiling of Threads.
Yeah, so, well, we were talking briefly about this before the show. It's just Threads. I saw an article that, at least 80% drop off in user base since it started. It was this big, kind of viral thing, billed as the, competitor to Twitter, and it came out and it was just really not a finished product. Is what a lot of people felt. It was kind of hot for a few days, but in the last week, over 80% of the user base has stopped using it already. So, and in that same week, Elon has rolled out a bunch of stuff on Twitter or X, allowing basically anybody to monetize their platform now, with a lot of significant profit sharing for a lot of, especially people in our Tesla influencer space. We've seen quite a bit of people being enabled for that monetization. So there's a bunch of new additional features coming, and Twitter appears to be getting better. Meanwhile, I think Mark Zuckerberg rushed this to market, and it kind of flopped.
Of course, we can't really call it Twitter anymore because Elon has rebranded it as X.
Yeah.
And he's doing that thing that, the artist formerly known as Prince thing. And
Right.
I just hope that goes away quickly because that still is with us 2 decades later, I think.
Mm.
But anyway, so Elon Musk Wednesday announced the creation of a new company called XAI, which centers on artificial intelligence. This new company will be led by Musk and work closely with X or Twitter, but they are separate. And the stated reason is to understand the true nature of the universe per XAI's website. And then the article goes on. The website also currently features a staff that appears to be made up of a dozen men. When I read something like that, I typically go down to the bottom and say, now, who's the author of this? And sure enough, it was a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm about to go on a rant here because I'm a businessman. And this whole genderizing thing and the feeling of bias in hiring is complete bullshit. Total and complete. I've been doing this for 40 years.
Yeah.
And any person, that has gender bias or gender blinders is going to be unsuccessful. Because the most important thing about growing any business is you have to be completely agnostic regarding gender or sexual preference or any of those other things. The only quest you have as a successful businessman is looking for skills, whatever package it comes in. And this whole genderizing thing of, well, there should have been at least one woman on this board of 10 or whatever is complete BS. If you're making selections based on gender, you're back to creating the problem that we had in the last century, which was bias and discrimination. To be successful in business, again, you have to have complete blinders on regarding any of those other aspects other than skills. If you want to bring up an image there, Jesse,
Yeah.
it is the XAI image. And I didn't show all of the 10 men that were included in this XAI, but I'm sure that they were selected for their gifts to this new venture. So, again, this announcing of XAI is to build a team that replaces ChatGPT. And in so doing, I did a bit more research, and it turns out that there's a probability that ChatGPT may go through an IPO. And the whole world is watching. And the speculation is that if this happens, remember ChatGPT took the world by storm at the beginning of this year. There are over, 100 million users already?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think probably 200 now.
Yeah. And if there truly is an IPO with ChatGPT, the speculation is that this may be the largest IPO in the history of IPOs. So what is OpenAI? Let's talk about that for a moment because that's what part of ChatGPT is part of. Well, it's a silicon-based company that started its journey generating AI for video games and other apps. The company has since switched its focus to generated AI research and development, creating the ChatGPT pre-trained transformer, they call it, in 2018, which is a unique language model that uses deep learning to produce human-like text. OpenAI is also responsible for the creation of Doll-E, an AI system that generates realistic images from a language prompt, and Whisper, a speech generating or a speech recognition model that's able to transcribe, identify, and translate into 99 languages. So the next question is, does Elon Musk own ChatGPT-4? Well, there's an interesting story there. While Elon co-founded ChatGPT, or OpenAI, and helped to financially back its mother company, OpenAI, in its early years, the ex-Twitter or ex-CEO doesn't currently own any stakes in the company because Elon officially left OpenAI's board of directors in 2018. And in a tweet, he says in 2019, a conflict of interest and prioritization of his other businesses, SpaceX and Tesla. And this is from a Twitter post, a question posed by Fred Lambert from Electrek. He is asking, it has never been entirely clear why you left. Some sort of conflict of I retest with Tesla? Can you elaborate on that? And Elon said, I had to focus on solving a painfully large number of engineering and manufacturing problems at Tesla, especially at SpaceX. So he left. And in a most recent interview that I saw where Elon was asked again, why aren't you still part of OpenAI? And he admitted that he was one of the founders. He actually chose the name. He invested roughly $50 million. Wasn't sure exactly how much. And he claims that it was an idiot move not making or taking more control or governance of the whole process. Elon's not willing, by the way, to admit mistakes. I don't know if you've noticed that. And he's also not willing or not unwilling to make them, but then own up to them later on. He said that according to several unnamed sources, close to the matter, Musk tried to take over OpenAI because it had fallen fatally behind Google, only to be flat out rejected by the co-founders Greg Brockman and Sam Altman. After his initial proposal was jilted, he walked away from the company and cut all financial ties. Now, mind you, this is after pouring $50 million roughly into the company, and promising to contribute $1 billion in funding over the course of several years. Now, to recover this lack of funding, OpenAI was then forced to launch a capped for-profit model that still runs alongside its nonprofit entity to this day. But after the explosive success of ChatGPT, has Elon Musk changed his opinion about it? It doesn't look like it. In March, they say, of this year, Musk and other leading tech figures like Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak signed an open letter citing the dangers of rapidly developing AI like ChatGPT-4, the language model that is powering ChatGPT. However, despite his public concerns about AI, Musk has since claimed to be working on his own alternative to the AI chatbot, TruthGPT, and most recently the announcement of XAI. In his own words, Elon says, TruthGPT aims to be the maximum truth-seeking AI, and it was set up to rival OpenAI's bias responses and politically correct language model. The question now becomes, who was funding ChatGPT along the way? Well, there's a very cozy relationship between Microsoft and OpenAI at this point, although Microsoft does not own ChatGPT, nor the founding company, OpenAI. But the two companies have been partnered commercially since 2016, and Microsoft continues to be the company's largest investor. Well, how much, you say, all right? Microsoft invested $1 billion into the research lab in 2019. Did you hear that? Not $50 million, $1 billion, after the companies first made their partnership exclusive. Then after the resounding success of ChatGPT and OpenAI's other products, Microsoft invested another $10 billion into the company this January, and they entered into the third phase of their partnership. Now, OpenAI's motivations are pretty obvious, but Microsoft also benefits heavily from this relationship. By investing in OpenAI, Microsoft is able to gain access to the lab's cutting-edge technology, which can then be deployed across its broad range of products and services. YouTube, Highlander Apparel says, It is total BS, quality of people. I live to learn and help others. All right, thank you for sharing. Instagram, ev.tripper says Twix. Twix?
Yeah, mix of Twitter and X.
Oh, okay. That would have been a cool name, come to think of it.
Twix. I think that one's trademarked already.
Is it? Okay.
It's the candy bar.
All right. Well, you know what? I'm out of talking points. We've run an hour and 15 minutes. Unless there are any final things that you guys can think we can explore, any additional rabbit holes we can chase and go down, it's almost time to wrap this. Again, we're enjoying these podcasts on a Sunday morning. And if you remember in the last Sunday's podcast, we really dug deeply into the intersection of religion and belief systems like it and AI. You can tell I'm getting to the end of this, right? Looks like we've got another question coming in from Napoleon on TikTok. He says, Star Trek Command engaged AI computing and data to provide intel info. And he's still typing, by the way. That's why I'm slowing down.
Yeah, we got it.
One of these days, I'm going to have screens here in our new studio where these questions are going to be streaming right on my monitor in front of me, so we won't have to have anybody retyping. Occasionally, what happens is as they retype the questions, I've been accused of being the Ron Burgundy of AI and podcasts, and I will read whatever's on the teleprompter. So the guys have to be very careful.
Yes.
Star Trek Command, again, TikTok Napoleon, he says, engaged AI in computing and data to provide intelligent information and decision-making. You're right, some of those old TV shows did use forms of AI, and they had a form of Alexa where they could talk to computer. Was it? Scotty, the guy talked, the engineer.
The engineer, yeah, using to teleport people.
Yeah.
I think this one's referring to Data, the AI robot character.
Oh, that's right. The guy with did he have the cool glasses?
No, this was the guy who was like really pale skin.
Oh yeah, the guy that needed to go out in the sun for a while.
Yeah, that was him. I forget the guy with the cool visor thing.
Yeah. It'll come to me probably after the show. YouTube, Bernard Homan. Saludos de Toluca, Mexico. Thank you. My granddaughter, by the way, who is 8 months old, is teaching me Spanish because her mom is Hispanic from Mexico City, around that area. And my most current Spanish is she likes the high five. So when I see her now, I go, Dame cinco, and her little hand goes up and she's right there with me. Instagram, Veer_BM016. He says, what is the frequency in the U.S.? Well, it's 60 hertz if we're talking about electrical frequency. And my son, who was with us in Europe, ran into some difficulty there because his camera, his Sony, was set to respond to 60 hertz. And suddenly he realized that the frame rate was making it blink when he was recording because they use 50 hertz over there. Instagram, Slow318 says, the Model S will take over the world at this rate, command and control of everything. TikTok, John Doe says, how the heck are they making all these batteries out of material out of the ground? Well, lithium ion, of course, is currently the what launched the EV revolution by creating a very energy-dense solution to carrying around DC energy with you. And it's now migrating into a number of other type of technologies, including graphene, sodium batteries, lithium iron phosphate, and some exciting technologies on the horizon. And how are they doing it? Lots of mining at this point. Okay, well, we've got another one. Instagram, 50 Shades of Black. He says, Mahlzeit. He's probably talking to something related to an earlier discussion that we had. In German, that means, hope you're enjoying your meal. And it's often used as a form of sarcasm if you don't like the food or if it's disgusting. All right. Well, it looks like we're going to wrap this one. We appreciate all of you that were joining us. And again, bring your questions, any additional questions or inputs. Feel free to email us at ev@gruber.com. The next podcasts are going to be Tuesday for the EV podcast at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Wednesday is the Tesla Roadster podcast at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then again Thursday at 10 a.m. PST for an additional EV podcast. Friday, we have our Power Services podcast, which is also gaining momentum. And any of you that want to join us, we appreciate your participation. And we will see you next Sunday. Thank you.